The Merkava is a main battle tank used by the Israel Defense Forces. The tank began development in 1973 and entered official service in 1979. 4 main versions of the tank have been deployed. It was first used extensively in the 1982 Lebanon War. The name Merkava was derived from the IDF's initial development program name. It is designed for rapid repair of battle damage, survivability, cost-effectiveness and off-road performance. Following the model of contemporary self-propelled howitzers, the turret assembly is located closer to the rear than in most main battle tanks. With the engine in front, this layout is intended to grant additional protection against a frontal attack, especially for the personnel in the main hull, like the driver. It also creates more space in the rear of the tank that allows increased storage capacity, as well as a rear entrance to the main crew compartment allowing easy access under enemy fire. This allows the tank to be used as a platform for medical disembarkation, a forward command and control station, and an armored personal carrier. The rear entrance's clamshell-style doors provide overhead protection when off- and unloading cargo and personnel. It was reportedly decided shortly before the beginning of the 2006 Lebanon War that the Merkava line would be discontinued within 4 years. However, on November 7, 2006, Haaretz reported that an Israeli General Staff assessment had ruled of the Merkava Mark IV that if properly deployed, the tank can provide its crew with better protection than in the past, and deferred the decision on discontinuing the line. On August 16, 2013, Israeli Defense Minister Moshe Ya'alon announced the decision to resume production of the Merkava main battle tank for the IDF Armored Corps. Development. In 1965, Israel's military establishment began research and development on a domestically produced tank, the Sabra. Initially, Britain and Israel collaborated to adapt the United Kingdom's Chieftain tank that had entered British Army service in 1966. However, in 1969, Britain decided not to sell the tank to Israel for political reasons. Israel Tal, who was serving as a brigade commander after the Suez Crisis, restarted plans to produce an Israeli-made tank, drawing on lessons from the 1973 Yom Kippur War, in which Israeli forces were outnumbered by those of the Middle East's Arab nations. By 1974, initial designs were completed and prototypes were built. After a brief set of trials, work began to retool the Tel Har-Shomer Ordnance Depot for full-time development and construction. After the new facilities were completed, the Merkava was announced to the public in the International Defense Review periodical. The first official images of the tank were then released to the American periodical Armed Forces Journal on May 4, 1977. The IDF officially adopted the tank in December 1978. The first Merkava Mk1 tanks were supplied to the IDF in April 1979, nearly 9 years after the decision to produce the Merkava Mk1 tank was taken. Primary contractors, the lead organization for system integration of the Merkava's main components is Israel Military Industries. The Israeli Ordnance Corps are responsible for final Merkava assembly. Contributors to the vehicle include, IMI manufactures the 105 mm and 120 mm main guns and their ammunition. Erdan Industries assembles and constructs the hull, drive and powertrains, and turret assemblies. Salter manufactures the 60 mm internal mortar. Elta designs and manufactures the electronic sensors and infrared optics. Elbit delivers the ballistics computer and digital fire control system. Tadiran provides cabin air conditioning, crew cabin intercom and radio equipment. ELOP, Elisra and Astronautics implement the optics and laser warning systems. Rafael Advanced Defense Systems builds and installs the Rafael Overhead Weapons Station and Trophy Active Protection System. L3 Communication Combat Propulsion Systems produces licensed copies of Germany's MTU Mount 883 1500 HP diesel engine power plant and ENKR K325 transmissions. Motorola supplies Tadiran communication encryption systems. DuPont supplies the Nomex, ballistic, and fire-retardant materials used by Hager. Russia Military Industries helped to design the KMT-4-5 anti-mine rollers and the ABK-3 dozer blade, now built by Erdan. FN Herstal supplies 7.62 ohm and 12.7 ohm coaxial and pintle-mounted machine guns. Caterpillar assisted with an Israeli-designed track system. Bentel Industries, a TAT Technology subsidiary, produced the brushless motors used in the Mark IV's turret and gun control system. General characteristics: firepower. The Merkava Mark I and II were armed with a 105 ohm M68 gun. The Mark III der Derived BAZ Kasag, and the Mark IV are armed with an IMI 120 ohm smoothbore gun. Each model of the Merkava has two 7.62 machine guns for anti-infantry defense and a 60 ohm mortar. Mobility: the tank's 1,500 horsepower turbocharged diesel engine was designed by MTU and is manufactured under license by L3 Communication Combat Propulsion Systems. The Mark IV's top road speed is 64 km/h. Variants: Merkava Mark I. The Mark I, operational since 1979, is the original design created as a result of Israel TAL's decision, and was fabricated and designed for mass production. The Mark I weighed 63 tons and had a 900 horsepower diesel engine, with a power-to-weight ratio of 14 horsepower per ton. It was armed with the 105mm M68 main gun, two 7.62mm machine guns for anti-infantry defense, and a 60 ohm mortar mounted externally, with its operator not completely protected by the tank's hull. The general design borrows the tracks from the British Centurion tank, which had seen extensive use during the Yom Kippur War. The Merkava was first used in combat during the 1982 Lebanon War, where Israel deployed 180 units. Although they were a success, the M113 APCs that accompanied them were found to have several defects and were withdrawn. Merkavas were converted into makeshift APCs or armored ambulances by taking out the palleted ammunition racks and storage. 10 soldiers or walking wounded could enter and exit through the rear door. After the war, many adjustments and additions were noted and designed, the most important being that the 60 ohm mortar needed to be installed within the hull and engineered for remote firing, a valuable feature that the Israelis had initially encountered on their Centurion Mk3s with their 2-inch Mk mortar. A shot trap was found beneath the rear of the turret bustle, where a well-placed shot could jam the turret completely. The installation of chain netting to disperse and destroy rocket-propelled grenades and anti-tank rockets before impacting the primary armor increased survivability. Merkava Mark II. The Mark II was first introduced into general service in April 1983 and incorporated numerous small upgrades as a result of the previous year's incursion into Lebanon. The new tank was optimized for urban warfare and low-intensity conflicts, with a weight and engine no greater than the Mark I. The Mark II used the same 105 ohm main gun and 7.62 ohm machine guns as the Mark I, but the 60 ohm mortar was redesigned during construction to be located within the hull and configured for remote firing to remove the need to expose the operator to enemy small arms fire. An Israeli-designed automatic transmission and increased fuel storage for increased range was installed on all further Mark IIs. Anti-rocket netting was fitted for increased survivability against infantry equipped with anti-tank rockets. Many minor improvements were made to the fire control system. Updated meteorological sensors, crosswind analyzers, and thermographic optics and image intensifiers gave greater visibility and battlefield awareness. Incrementally improved versions of the original Mark II were designated, with many of these tanks still in service today, Mark IIB, with thermal optics and unspecified updates to the fire control system. Mark IIC, with more armor on the top of the turret to improve protection against attack from the air. Mark IID, with modular composite armor on the chassis and turret, allowing rapid replacement of damaged armor. Merkava Mark III. The Merkava Mark III was introduced in December 1989, and had upgrades to the drivetrain, powertrain, armament, and electronic systems. The most prominent addition was the incorporation of the locally developed IMI 120mm gun. This gun and a larger 1,200 horsepower diesel engine increased the total weight of the tank to 65 tons, but the larger engine increased the maximum cruising speed to 60 km/h. The turret was re-engineered for movement independent of the tank chassis, allowing it to track a target regardless of the tank's movement. Many other improvements were made, including external two-way telephone for secure communications between the tank crew and dismounted infantry, upgraded ammunition storage containers to minimize ammunition cook-off, addition of laser designators, incorporation of the Kasach modular armor system, designed for rapid replacement and repair in the battlefield and for quick upgrading as new designs and sophisticated materials become available, creation of the Mark IIB, with unspecified armor upgrades. BAZ system. The 1995 Mark III BAZ had many improved and additional systems including, upgraded fire control system components, from Electro-Optics Industries and Elbit, provides the tank with the ability to engage moving targets while on the move, NBC protection systems, locally developed central air conditioning system, added improvements in ballistic protection. The Mark IID has removable modular composite armor on the chassis and turret. Derived. The last generation of the Mark III class was the Mark IID derived, which included several components as prototypes to be introduced in the Mark IV. Upgraded and strengthened tracks, installation of the ROWS. Merkava Mark IV. The Mark IV is the most recent upgrade of the Merkava tank and has been in development since 1999. The upgrade's development was announced in an October 1999 edition of the Bumasheni military publication. However, new Merkava Mark IIIs continued to be produced until 2003. The first Merkava IVs were in production in limited numbers by the end of 2004. The model has a new fire control system, the ULOP Knight Mark IV. Removable modular armor, from the Merkava Mark IID, is used on all sides, including the top and a V-shaped belly armor pack for the underside. This modular system is designed to allow for damaged tanks to be rapidly repaired and returned to the field. Tank rounds are stored in individual fireproof canisters, which reduce the chance of cook-offs in a fire inside the tank. The turret is dry. No active rounds are stored in it. Some features, such as hull shaping, exterior non-reflective paints, and shielding for engine heat plumes mixing with air particles to confuse enemy thermal images, were carried over from the IAI program of the Israeli Air Force to make the tank harder to spot by heat sensors and radar. The Mark IV includes the larger 120mm main gun of the previous versions, but can fire a wider variety of ammunition, including heat and sabot rounds like the APF-SDS kinetic energy penetrator, using an electrical semi-automatic revolving magazine for 10 rounds. It also includes a much larger 12.70 machine gun for anti-vehicle operations. The new fire control system enables the Merkava to shoot down helicopters such as the Russian Mi-24 and the French Gazelle, both of which are used by Israel's neighbors. The Mark IV has the Israeli-designed TSAWS Caterpillar track system, called Matscom by troops. This system is designed to endure the harsh basalt rock conditions of Lebanon and the Golan Heights with minimal track shedding. The tank carries the Israeli Elbit Systems BMS, a centralized system that takes data from tracked units and UAVs in theater, displays it on color screens, and distributes it in encrypted form to all other units equipped with BMS in a given theater. The Merkava IV has been designed for rapid repair and fast replacement of damaged armor, with the implementation of sections of modular armor that can be easily removed and replaced. It is also designed to be cost-effective in production and maintenance, and as a result its unit cost is lower than for a number of other tanks used by Western armies. MKIVM Windbreaker. The Merkava Mk4M Windbreaker is a Merkava Mk4 equipped with a trophy active protection system designated in Hebrew unregistered trademark AK. The system was operational by the end of 2007. The mass production of Merkava Mk4M tanks started on 2009 and a whole brigade of Merkava Mk4M tanks was declared operational on 2011. The trophy APS is combat-proven and intercepted successfully RPGs rounds and anti-tank guided missiles, including the most advanced 9M133 Kornet, fired by Hamas before and during Operation Protective Edge in 2014. Specifications of models, combat history. The Merkava was used widely during the 1982 Lebanon War. The tank outperformed Syrian tanks and proved largely immune to anti-tank weapons of the time that were used against it. It was judged to be a significant improvement over Israel's previously most effective main battle tank at that time, the Centurion tank. 34 Merkava tanks were lost during war. In February 2002, a Merkava 3 was destroyed by a roadside bomb near Netzarim settlement in the Gaza Strip. The tank was lured into intervening in an attack on a settler convoy. The tank went over a heavy mine, which detonated and totally destroyed the tank. 4 soldiers were killed in the blast. This was the first heavy tank to be destroyed during the Second Intifada. A second Israeli tank, Merkava 2 or probably a Merkava 3, was destroyed a month later in the same area and a further 3 soldiers were killed. A third Merkava 2 or 3 tank was destroyed near the Kaisufim crossing, when 1 soldier was killed and 2 wounded. During the 2006 Lebanon War, 5 Merkava tanks were destroyed. Only the minority of the tanks used during the war were Merkava Mark IVs, as by 2006 they had still only entered service in limited numbers. Hezbollah fired over 1,000 anti-tank missiles during the conflict against both tanks and dismounted infantry. Some 45% of all tanks and armored vehicles hit with anti-tank missiles during the conflict suffered some form of armor penetration. In total, 15 tank crewmen were killed by these ATGM penetrations. The penetrations were caused by tandem warhead missiles. Hezbollah weaponry was believed to include advanced Russian RPG-29 Vampa, AT-5 Konkurs, AT-13 Metis-M, and laser-guided AT-14 Kornet heat missiles. The IDF reported finding the state-of-the-art Kornet ATGMs on Hezbollah positions in the village of Gandouri. Several months after the ceasefire, reports have provided detailed photographic evidence that Kornet ATGMs were indeed both in possession of, and used by, Hezbollah in this area. Another Merkava 4 tank crewman was killed when a tank ran over an improvised explosive device. This tank had additional V-shaped underside armor, limiting casualties to just 1 of the 7 personnel on board. In total, 5 Merkava tanks were destroyed. Of these 2 Merkava Mark IVs, 1 was by powerful IEDs, and the other by Russian AT-14 Kornet missiles. The Israeli military said that it was satisfied with the Merkava Mark IV's performance, and attributed problems to insufficient training before the war. In total, 50 Merkava tanks were damaged, 8 of which remained serviceable on the battlefield. 21 tanks suffered armor penetrations. After the 2006 war, and as the IDF becomes increasingly involved in unconventional and guerrilla warfare, some analysts say the Merkava is too vulnerable to advanced anti-tank missiles, that in their man-portable types can be fielded by guerrilla warfare opponents. Other post-war analysts, including David Eshel, disagree, arguing that reports of losses to Merkavas were overstated and that summing up the performance of Merkava tanks, especially the latest version Merkava Mark IV, most tank crews agree that, in spite of the losses sustained and some major flaws in tactical conduct, the tank proved its mettle in its first high-saturation combat. On a comparison done by the Armor Corps newsletter, it was shown that the average number of crewmen killed per tank penetrated was reduced from 2 during the Yom Kippur War to 1.5 during the 1982 Lebanon War to 1 during the 2006 Lebanon War, proving how, even in the face of the improvement in anti-tank weaponry, the Merkava Mark IV provides better protection to its crew. The IDF wanted to increase orders of new Merkava Mark IV tanks, and planned to add the Trophy Active Protection System to Merkava Mark IV tanks, and to increase joint training between crews and Israeli anti-tank soldiers. The Merkava 4 was used more extensively during the Gaza War, as it had been received by the IDF in increasing numbers since 2006, replacing more of the Merkava 2 and 3 versions of the tank that were in service. 1 brigade of Merkava IVs managed to bisect the Gaza Strip in 5 hours without casualties. The commander of the brigade stated that battlefield tactics had been greatly revised since 2006. Tactics had also been modified to focus on asymmetric or guerrilla war threats, in addition to the conventional war scenarios that the Merkava had primarily been designed to combat. By October 2010, the IDF had begun to equip the first Merkava IVs with the Trophy Active Protection System, to improve the tank's protection against advanced anti-tank missiles which use tandem charge heat warheads. Added protection systems included an Elbit laser warning system and IM-ion-built smoke screen grenades. In December 2010, Hamas in Gaza fired an AT-14 Kornet anti-tank missile at a Merkava Mark III tank stationed on the Israel-Gaza border near Al-Berij. It had hitherto not been suspected that Hamas possessed such a sophisticated missile. The missile penetrated the tank's armor, but in this instance it caused no injuries among its crew. As a result of the attack, Israel decided to deploy, along the Gaza border, its first Merkava Mark IV battalion equipped with a Trophy Active Protection System. On March 1, 2011, a Merkava Mk4 stationed near the Gaza border, equipped with a Trophy Active Protection System, successfully foiled a missile attack aimed towards it and became the first operational success of the system. Export. In September 2011, Turkey suspended a $5 billion deal for 1,000 Merkava Mk3 tanks. In May 2012, Israel offered procurement of Merkava 4 tanks to the Colombian Army. The sale would include 25 €40 tanks at an approximate cost of $6 million each, as well as a number of Neymar APCs. With the threat of the expanding Venezuelan military, it would strengthen Colombian armored forces against Venezuelan T-72 tanks. In June 2014, Israel has signed a landmark contract with a foreign government for the sale of its locally produced flagship Merkava 4 main battle tank. Derivatives. Following the Second Intifada, the Israel Defense Forces modified some of their Merkavas to satisfy the needs of urban warfare. Merkava LIC, these are Merkava Mark III BAZ or Mark IV tanks, converted for urban warfare. The LIC designation stands for Low Intensity Conflict, underlining its emphasis on counterinsurgency, street-to-street inner-city asymmetrical type warfare of the 21st century. The Merkava is equipped with a turret 12.7 caliber coaxial machine gun, which enables the crew to lay down fairly heavy cover fire without using the main gun. Like the new remote-operated weapon station, the coaxial machine gun is fired from inside the tank without exposing the crew to small arms fire and snipers. The most sensitive areas of a tank, its optics, exhaust ports and ventilators, are all protected by a newly developed high-strength metal mesh, to prevent the possibility of explosives charges being planted there. Rubber whip pole markers with LED tips and a driver's rear-facing camera have been installed to improve navigation and maneuverability in an urban environment by day or by night. Merkava tankambulance. Some Merkava tanks have been fitted with full medical and ambulance capabilities while retaining their armament. The cabin area has been converted for carrying injured personnel and has had 2 stretchers and life support medical station systems added with a full medical team complement to operate under combat conditions with a Merkava battalion. The vehicle has a rear door to facilitate evacuation under fire, and can provide covering fire. The tankambulance is not an unarmed ambulance and as such is not protected by the Geneva Convention's provisions regarding ambulances, but it is far less vulnerable to accidental or deliberate fire than an ambulance or armored personnel carrier. Merkava IFV Neymar. Neymar Merkava is an infantry fighting vehicle based on the Merkava Mark IV chassis. In service since 2008, the vehicle was initially called Neymar, but later renamed to Neymar. Neymar is equipped with a Samson remote-controlled weapon station armed with either a .50 M2 Browning heavy machine gun or a Mk19 automatic grenade launcher. It also has a 7.62 mag machine gun, 60 on mortar and smoke grenades. Like Merkava Mark IV, it is optimized for high level of crew survival on the battlefield. The Neymar has a 3-man crew and may carry up to 9 infantrymen and a stretcher. An ambulance variant can carry 2 casualties on stretchers and medical equipment. The Golani Brigade used 2 Neymar IFVs during CAS lead operation. Merkava ARV Neymar, the Merkava armored recovery vehicle initially called Neymar, but subsequently renamed Neymar. It is an armored recovery vehicle based on a Merkava Mark III or IV chassis. It can tow disabled tanks and carries a complete Merkava backup power pack that can be changed in the field in under 90 minutes. There are two versions of Nemera, the heavier equipped with a 42-ton meter crane and a 35-ton meter winch, and the smaller equipped with a smaller crane. Merkava howitzers Holf. Two prototypes of Holf 155mm self-propelled howitzer with automatic loading system were built by Soltom in 1984 and 1986. The 45-ton vehicle had a long 155mm gun barrel giving a range of 45+ km. Using GPS, inertial navigation, and an internal fire control computer, it was also capable of direct fire while on the move. It never entered production. FMCV, on July 14, 2011, the Jerusalem Post reported that the IDF had begun developing a successor for the Merkava series of tanks. The development was started in part by the arrival of the Trophy Active Protection System. With the system's ability to intercept threats at a standoff distance, there was a review of the need for vehicles like the Merkava to have thick, heavy layers of armor. The Merkava Tank Planning Directorate set up a team to study principles for a future tank and present ideas for an armored fighting vehicle to provide mobile firepower on a future battlefield. The team reviewed basic design principles including lessening its weight, armor thickness compared to an APS to intercept anti-tank threats, reducing the crew size, and the type of main gun. Horsepower capabilities and heavy and light track systems compared to a wheeled chassis were also considered. With future battlefield condition developments affecting design features, the vehicle may not be considered a tank in the traditional sense. By July 2012, details began to emerge of considerations for developing technologies for the new design. One possibility is the replacement of the traditional main gun with a laser cannon or an electromagnetic pulse cannon. Other improvements could include a hybrid electric engine and a reduced crew of two. The goals of the new tank are to make it faster, better protected, more interoperable and lethal than the current Merkava. The 65-ton Merkava is not regarded as useful for missions other than conventional warfare. The Israeli Army Armored Corps wants a lighter and highly mobile vehicle for rapid response and urban warfare situations that can fill multiple roles. In 2012, the Defense Ministry drafted a program for development of a new family of light armored vehicles called Riker, a Hebrew acronym for Future Manned Combat Vehicle. The FMCV is planned to weigh 35 tons and have sufficient armor and weapons for both urban and conventional military operations. Instead of one multi-mission chassis, separate vehicles in distinct variants will perform different roles with all vehicles using common components. Vehicles are likely to be wheeled to maneuver in urban environments and move troops and equipment around in built-up areas. While the FMCV will be a fifth-generation vehicle as a follow-on to the Merkava IV, it will not be a replacement for the tank. The Merkava and Nemera heavy-tracked vehicles will remain in service for decades, while FMCV vehicles are to address entirely different operational requirements. Although the program seems similar to the American Future Combat Systems effort, which failed to produce a family of rapidly deployable lightweight ground vehicles, program officials say they learned from the American experience and that the FMCV was more focused and driven by simpler and more reasonable requirements based on cost considerations. Officials expect requirements for a range of configurations for FMCV light armored vehicles to be approved in 2014 and solicited to Israeli and American companies. The IDF hopes for the FMCV family of vehicles be operational by 2020. References, notes. Bibliography, Kordsman, Anthony H. Sullivan, William D., Lessons of the 2006 Israeli-Hezbollah War, CSISA. Further reading. Kasnoff, Joel, The 188th Crybaby Brigade, A Skinny Jewish Kid from Chicago Fights Hezbollah, a Memoir.